Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Kirsten Lee, and we're here today to talk about the tropical storm coverage that was released in 2023 to enhance the Hurricane Insurance Protection Wind Index program. In the first year, this coverage paid over $80 million from Florida to North Carolina, but folks still have some questions, so hopefully we can clear some things up. And we have Pat O'Leary from USDA here today to help me better understand. Thanks for joining us, Pat.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm glad to help explain how this policy works.
Before we get into some of the mechanics, can you explain why RMA developed this product?
Great question. This coverage originated with the 2018 Farm Bill. Congress wanted us to look at coverage for hurricanes and tropical storms. The intent of these programs is to release indemnities quickly after these devastating weather events. RMA released the Hurricane Insurance Protection Wind Index, or HIP-WI, in 2020, and it has already paid out over $700 million. It's been very popular and generally well understood. Since the initial year of HIP-WI in 2020, we've had stakeholders ask us whether we could also insure tropical storms. RMA worked with the industry and farmer organizations to come up with the tropical storm coverage that we have today. It was released in 2023, and RMA is still collecting feedback and looking at potential changes.
Okay, that's great information and context. Really appreciate it. So, help me understand how I purchase this coverage. Does it replace my individual crop policies?
Well, as with all things crop insurance, the place to start is with your agent. With that said, it's important to note that this does not replace your individual crop policy. Tropical storm option is based on the coverage of your underlying policy. You also need to purchase hurricane coverage to be eligible to purchase the tropical storm option. The tropical storm option provides coverage for a portion of the deductible, up to 95% of the expected crop value. Indemnity payments are made when the county or an adjacent county is within the area of sustained hurricane force winds from a named cyclone as determined by the hurricane data provisions. The hurricane data provisions are the rules established by RMA and are incorporated in your policy. Your agent should provide you a copy of these if you want to review them and ask any questions prior to purchasing this coverage.
So, why can't someone just buy the tropical storm option?
The tropical storm option is only allowed if you select the HIP-WI endorsement. RMA wanted to provide flexibility for the insured to decide whether coverage for a tropical storm weather event was something they wanted to elect. In addition, since both of these coverages provide insurance for the same band of coverage, it made the most sense to make the tropical storm coverage an option to the existing HIP-WI endorsement. They also didn't want producers to buy only tropical storm coverage and then be left with nothing when a hurricane hits.
Okay, I understand how the coverage is set and generally what will be paid. How is it triggered?
The tropical storm option triggers similar to the HIP-WI endorsement with a few differences. The wind speed trigger is less, 34 knots instead of 64 knots, and there is an added rainfall trigger. The rainfall trigger is a county average as described in the hurricane data provisions and is based on the grid weighted average provided by NOAA's Climate Prediction Center. The county average must meet or exceed 6 inches of precipitation to trigger.
I see. So, does RMA determine the wind and rainfall?
No. We're experts in crop insurance, but not this data, so we rely on NOAA to provide the data. We use data from NOAA to determine if a county experienced tropical storm force winds and precipitation. The data used for determining if a county experienced tropical storm force winds is from the International Best Track Archive for Climate Stewardship, and the data used to determine the county average precipitation is from the Climate Prediction Center.
On the rainfall, I know you've explained where it comes from. Are they using gauges listed on the NOAA website, or do they call and ask people what they received? How do they calculate the rainfall?
No, NOAA CPC uses daily gauge reports only from sites certified by the National Weather Service Office of Observation. There are lots of different weather stations that are publicly available, but these are the only stations used. Each grid uses between 4 and 10 weather stations to determine the precipitation within the grid. The weather stations may not even be in the grid, but rainfall amounts are interpolated based on distance to determine an average for the grid.
So, for example, if my neighbor's gauge showed 8 inches, but NOAA CPC says there's a county average of just 5 inches, there would not be a payment?
That's right. NOAA does not take into account personal rain gauge observations, only the gauges that are part of the National Weather Service Office of Observation.
Okay, I have that straight now. Why doesn't RMA take these into account? Wouldn't it make sense to use the actual rainfall information?
We understand that perspective, but we need to use a process that uses certified stations to ensure all rainfall amounts can be verified, and we rely on the weather experts to determine the amounts.
So once RMA gets the data, how do you determine the county average?
Well, let's look at an example for Seminole County, Florida, which has 5 grids that exist within its boundaries. That means there will be 5 rainfall amounts that will need to be averaged based on the percentage of area each grid occupies within that county. A simple way to think about this is the larger the grid area within the county, the more effect the grid will have on the final rainfall amount. Once the grid and percentage of area information is known, the rainfall amount can be added up to determine if 6 or more inches have fallen within the time period.
You mentioned that payments go out within weeks, but that there's another process where additional counties can be added. Can you explain that a bit?
Yes, RMA issues payments as soon as we get the first set of data from NOAA. For rainfall and wind speed data to both become available, it takes a couple of weeks, and later on NOAA will review both the precipitation data and the wind speed data. This takes a couple of months for the precipitation, but the wind speed is usually not done until the spring of the following year. If this quality-controlled data results in additional counties being triggered under either the HIPWE or tropical storm option, we will release the additional counties to be paid indemnities, but we won't take away counties already paid.
That really clears things up for me. You've given folks a lot to think about and discuss with their crop insurance agents, and just really appreciate your help.
You're very welcome, and remember, if you don't have a crop insurance agent, visit the RMA website to visit the Agent Locator tool to find one near you. On the website, you can also review more information about HIPWE and the tropical storm option. So thanks for stopping by to learn more.
Oh, one last thing before you go. Is this policy set in stone for the future, or is RMA open to feedback?
We have a good product, but we realize farmer feedback is key, so we're always open to suggestions. We have insured wheat since 1938 and still are making changes to that policy. One of the great features of crop insurance is that it can generally be flexible, and RMA has a history of listening to farmers. You can contact an RMA regional office if you have feedback to provide, and we thank you for joining us to learn more about insurance coverage for tropical storms and hurricanes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.